Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Soaring Through Chaos. And we are in the midst of crazy times. Every day there's something new that happens and something unexpected, whether it's the potential loss of friends and family, or it's just the fear of the disease, or economic difficulties, not being underemployed or unemployed, not having enough things going on. And amid all this, there's this divisiveness, there's this conflict, finger pointing. So this is really chaos, and each one of us is affected in different ways. And the person who told me what chaos is and how to dance with it is right in front of us, right next to me here. Her name is Claire Alexander. Claire, I learned how to dance through chaos thanks to you, honestly. And it has helped me go through these challenging times like nothing else ever before. I would have been as lost as many other people, wondering what to do during these COVID times. Can you tell us about your journey into dance and into healing dances and all that? How did it all happen?
So I attended a workshop with Shakti Gawain, and the people I was volunteering at it because I didn't have the money to attend, so I had called them and said, "Can I trade?" And so I was doing selling books, and while the workshop was getting started, I was selling books, and the person I was selling books with says, "Well, I have to go because I have to go teach a class." And so I asked what class, and she said, "Oh, it's five rhythms." And I'm, well, what
Wow.
is that? And she says, "Well, we do it every Sunday morning. Come next week." And she just told me where it was, and then she took off. And I got a little more information, and I went the following Sunday, and into this really old dance studio in downtown Houston. And it was, peeling paint on the walls, and really, rough kind of wood floor. And there were maybe 40 people in the room, and they were just dancing crazy. And I was so self-conscious when I walked in that room. I really wanted to move my body. I wanted to find a way to feel. One of the things I had been working on as a survivor of sexual trauma and developmental trauma was that I was aware that I had fingers, but I couldn't feel them. And I never knew that was an issue until somebody asked me, "Well, what are you feeling?" And I was like, "Well, like there was no connection up my arm." And it was so startling to me that I had never noticed how disembodied I was. So I was trying to figure out ways to get back into my body. So when this came up and I went to my first dance, I was hooked. It was as self-conscious as I was. I finally decided nobody's going to notice what I'm doing because they're totally into their own thing. And so there's nothing I can do here that would embarrass me. And so I went every Sunday after that. It was called Sweat Your Prayers, and it was in Houston, Texas, and that was in 1991.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought you started your journey in Austin. That was much later when you
Oh
started
no.
teaching.
I had been dancing in Houston for about 3 years, and one of the teachers who led it, there were four or five people who took turns, and none of them was a five rhythms teacher. They had just been hosting Gabrielle workshops in Houston through the Spectrum Center, and Rosa Glenn Riley was her producer. And then a bunch of them who had gotten together and gone to all the workshops started having a weekly practice group for five rhythms. And so I went for 3 years. One of them was leaving and came up to me and said, I think you'd make a great teacher. Do you think you'd want to take my spot? Have you ever thought about teaching? And until that moment, I never had. And that's kind of how it got started. That's how the seed got planted back in like 1991, 92.
And you continued to work in the corporate space, is that right? I remember that even through Austin and maybe even to the Bay Area, you're working in startups and big companies. Is that correct?
No, no. When I first started dancing, I was out of work. My PTSD had been really, really severe through my late 20s and into my early 30s, and I wasn't employable. But finding the dance was giving me like an avenue back into being employable and being able to function. I think without it, I would have probably ended up on Social Security disability because of the impact of my trauma in my late 20s, like how it resurfaced. And it was the dance that really saved my life. I give it credit for, first sobriety and then the dance gave me my life back.
And honestly, Claire, I consider you my first teacher in a facilitator, whatever term you would like to use. But you were the one who introduced me to dance as a form of meditation. And that was for me, that was as a year after I had started doing daily Vipassana or mindfulness practice, which I began in August of 2002. So I end up searching, Googling for dance with no steps because I know I couldn't sit for hours in silent meditation. My PTSD would kick in. And I had to understand it. There was so much emotion locked up in my body that I showed up on the dance floor October of 2000, sorry, October of 2003. Yeah, it's been 16 years since then, 17 years since then. Never stopped moving. And I remember dancing on my 40th birthday a few months later because by that time it didn't matter. I just wanted to move. So it was a huge transition for thousands and thousands of people. So thank you. Whatever brought you into the dance helped you heal, helped thousands of people heal, just like me. And we've been talking about it. We've had at least 5 conversations on that. Ruben Shalef, Stacy Butcher, Lisa Herendine, and now I finally get to talk to you. So tell me more about how these dances can heal and how did they heal you and what happens in this dance.
Well, my pathway in was through the five rhythms, and I studied. When I left Houston, I moved to Austin and called Gabrielle and said, "There's nobody doing five rhythms here. Can I start something?" And she gave me permission to start a Sweat Your Prayers. And so I started teaching in Austin, and I had partners at the time. And then as I got more into it, as I got more into holding space for it, I really started to see, oh, I need more information. So I was the one of all of the teachers or the holders of the space in Austin that started going to Gabrielle's weekend workshops. And I went to Houston. And then the next thing I did was I signed myself up for her mirrors workshop in California. And it was 7 days at that time? It was either 5 or 7 days. I had never been to Northern California. It was up in the wine country at a place called White Sulphur Hot Springs. And I immersed myself, and it was an immersion into the ego, and the and I felt like it was like a spiritual sobriety. When I came back from that, I was a different human being. Like all the dancing had been, it had supported me and gotten me up and moving again. And I'd gotten a job in Houston, like I became employable again and had worked in hotels and was building skills and reinventing myself. And then moving to Austin, I was starting over. I was actually I was never employed there. I was always self-employed, but my focus was the dance. And we got really big, really fast there. And we had 150 people coming to a Sunday morning class. So we were kind of like rock stars in Austin for a long
Yes,
time,
yes.
right?
I actually went
And
to Austin and I mentioned that I'm a student of Claire And they were all coming and hugging me. You're with Claire. You took her away from us. No, no, no.
I'm surprised they knew because I was Lori Smullen when I lived in
Yeah, yeah. I
Texas,
mentioned
right?
that. I mentioned
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
I became
yeah.
your student when you're still Loris Mullen. And I
That's
remember the story of how you got the last name?
true.
You remember
Marianne,
that? Yes.
Marianne gifted it to me. It was really sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we started calling you Claire Alexander the Great. So anything that helped us flow through life and find meaning, you know.
Yeah.
So what brought you to the Bay Area? I know you had an amazing practice. Hundreds of people would attend, and I've been there. I've been to the Austin Center, and it was
Yeah.
just energizing, to say the least. I think there was one
Yeah.
place in downtown or somewhere in Austin, and there were
Yeah, we were
so
called
many
body choir. We started as
body
Sweat Your
clap.
Prayers,
Yeah.
and when I started getting more active with Gabrielle and traveling all over, I lots of time in California, lots of time in New York City, and then I would follow her to Europe. And the more I immersed myself in the deeper end of the pool with the five rhythms, the more I really saw its potential and what it was creating space for in human development and in relational development, and just how to be a human being and not a projection of the latest fads or the social norms, or but to really find the creative expression of our soul's purpose. And so I got very excited about the work she was doing, and I was invited to train with her in 1997. And so once I went off to the training, it was decided that Body Choir would separate off from Gabrielle Roth so that they could do what they did. And then when I finished training, I came back and was a Five Rhythms teacher in Austin. And frankly, it didn't go well. Nobody wanted to be taught. Nobody wanted to take classes. They were more interested. We had been more invested in the social aspect of dancing together
Yeah.
as a conscious and ecstatic dance, and it was not a path that I was interested in anymore. Of being a community leader and a social, without the construct of what holds us as a community, like what would give us legs and really invest in each other and our own personal growth. So I moved out here in 1999. I lost my paid work in Austin. I was a bookkeeper at the time, and they were going a different direction, and so my employer helped me move out here. He gave me a lot of support, and I relocated because I wanted to be near Kathy and Lori and Anna Halprin. And it seemed like this was the hotbed of all the expressive arts, the movement expressive arts. Bonnie Bainbridge Cohen was out here. There's just so many amazing teachers within an hour's drive, that it was an Esalen, and it was a no-brainer that I would end up out here.
It's really the mecca of dance practices, healing dance practices, and even soul motion is here now. Biodanza, you name it, and we have it in the San Francisco Bay Area. Even
Yeah,
during these difficult times, we have
yeah,
ecstatic dance going online, and open floor, and everything is available to a limited extent, and it just keeps me and many others alive, totally alive. Wow. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
have
Soul Motion wasn't even born when
right, right.
when I came. My rhythms teacher,
Yeah,
who I hosted a couple of times in Austin, and he was just starting to pull away and go in his own direction. And I did
yeah.
some leadership training with him out in Oregon. And so, yeah, to see Soul Motion come alive, and then, that's Vin left, and then Yakov and Susanna, and created Medicine Dance, and
Oh, oh, that also
right.
came out of Five Rhythms or
Yeah,
Gabrielle
Yakov
before.
and Susanna were devout students and taught all the curriculum up
Wow.
to the cycles map for Gabrielle, and then they decided to go their own direction, and yeah, So I've been around all the splittings of the five rhythms. Vin was the first to go,
And
and
then
then Jakob and Susanna.
how did open floor start? What led to the development? And
It was it was after Gabrielle's death. You know, Gabrielle was really clear that Jonathan was the heir apparent of Five Rhythms, and she invested, as she knew she was dying, she was investing all of her resources into downloading it to the person she trusted most, which was Jonathan. And so at the end of the day, you know, people who were Jonathan's peers and babysitters were left as his students. And it was a really odd moment. And many of us felt really strongly about the change in the direction of the Five Rhythms, that it was moving away from everything that Gabrielle had taught us about creativity and expression and not boxing ourselves in. And so it was just time, I think, for Kathy and Lori and Andrea to really claim their wisdom, to, you know, to really come into their own. I think they had kept themselves a little contained in order to honor their teacher. And when that wasn't an issue anymore, it was time for them to sit and go, you know, what would we do if we weren't Five Rhythms teachers, and look at what their collective wisdom was. And I think what was beautiful about the open floor was that it was a consortium of Five Rhythms teachers from all over the planet. And it was a brain trust of wisdom. Not It wasn't a top down, like a charismatic leader and followers. And this is Willow.
yeah,
It was a group of intelligent people from all different cultures with these huge big hearts and this fascination for human potential, and a lot of education, a lot of you know it formed around the concept of and dynamic governance. You know,
I
so
love
like
that.
from
I
the
love that
very
about open floor.
beginning, it was this collaborative, consent-based organization. So it has never been just one person's thoughts tumbling down and everybody else executing them. It has always been the brain trust. And it's beautiful. I mean, we're 6 years in. We've got a gorgeous curriculum. We're just about to announce the new training curriculum, and much of it is going online. I'm so impressed with how I'm just super impressed with how Open Floor was. Like within a week of the shutdowns, we were up on Zoom and fumbling our way through getting people dancing online. We were one of the first to
Yes.
you know, we got it up there, we got it moving, we created space for people and normalized it for people to be dancing in their bedrooms. I've seen people dance in their bathrooms online now. Like it's their only private space in the house. It's
Yeah.
so encouraging, but you know, the power of dance and how much it's needed. But
Yeah.
so yeah, it's been quite a ride. Yeah. To form something new, to be in the beginnings of this little seedling turning into something so gorgeous.
And I like that it's open source, there's sharing, there's science, there's art, there's practice, all integrated. It's a tapestry. It brings
Yeah.
together people, it brings together places, it brings
Yeah.
together not just the brain, but the heart and the gut. And it's
Yeah.
just completely integrating at various levels. It's
Yeah.
perfectly okay to talk about interoception and proprioception and the
Yeah.
amygdala and all that. And it's perfectly okay to be in the practice and the dance and the
Yeah.
creativity that comes out of it. I just
Yeah.
feel blessed to be in this time, and we are bringing in as a social yet deep practice where it's, that reminds me at some point your own practice, ecstatic productions, became embodied. Tell us about that. Or should we look at the video first? or open
Oh,
open
you
floor?
know, that might be a good idea is to toss this in.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, what I would say about this is that it was filmed during the first round of the open floor training at this
Oh,
massive training in Ireland. And it was over 100. These are all the people you're going to see in the video are teacher trainees. Many of them, five of them's teachers who were also becoming open floor teachers. And it was the weekend. I think that's when it was. No, I'm wrong. That's the libido video. But it's just a really beautiful introduction to the purpose and the foundations of open floor.
okay, here we go.
When we move, when we dance, we make the invisible visible. I believe in dance as a way to put back the pieces that we would rather either forget or discard. When I'm connected to my creativity, when I'm connected to my inspiration, it has a body component.
There's a way you can more directly connect to your emotions, to your feelings, and give those feelings an expression or a vibrancy that you're not going to get just by talking about it.
Music, beat, dance is something that every single culture shares. It's our nature.
We all experience unconsciousness in our lives. A lot of times what that means is you've got to dance what's in between you and fully waking up, fully being conscious.
When it looks hopeless, there's always something that can shine if you give it the space. That's what we're inviting. We're inviting the soul to shine, the heart to be alive and have a life on the dance floor.
Physical embodiment creates emotional intelligence. The way we develop emotional intelligence is by feeling at home in our body. When I have the experience of being really connected to myself, I feel alive, I feel capable, I feel generous. To be able to see others and to extend my emotional capacity beyond myself. That takes a body that knows it's okay. Holding other people so that they can get bigger than themselves. Feel the bigger picture, feel the awe and the gratitude of life.
A lot of people think I need to be fit or have a really good body. People who are injured or having chronic diseases find a way of moving with their bodies in the state they are. We can use the mind and the soul to invite the imagination.
The movement principles that we teach our students are resources for them to have a healing experience emotionally. When I become emotionally alive and fluid, there's incredible beauty in that feeling.
It really makes a huge difference when people know that they can connect to goodness, solid, reliable goodness in their bodies, in their hearts, in their minds. In open floor, we consider the work a practice because it's something that we can actually do over and over and develop new neural pathways. We literally change how we function in our body. But you can't change unless you repeat. The more we practice on the dance floor, the more skillful we are off the dance floor.
For me, creativity is our birthright. I don't believe that there is a person on the planet that is not essentially creative. We all have that seed inside of ourselves.
The end result of the work is that it opens your heart. And that to me is a real signpost. Like if I find that I'm feeling more connected, more loving, more open, then the open floor has done its job.
We're dancing to learn. We're not learning to dance. We use the dance to help people break out of some of the old habits and patterns that they've been carrying their whole life. And there's a moment where the room becomes a we. We've melted the separation through the dance.
Wow. Wow.
Had you not seen that before?
No, this is the first time I'm seeing this video. I'd seen the 5 rhythms ones, but this is so amazing.
Isn't that extraordinary? I couldn't interrupt it and say anything about it because I'm just so moved every time I watch it. And, you know, there's so many people I love on that dance floor and in those films. And, you know, so many are my colleagues and I've never met them and may never. But it's so cool knowing that they're out there all over the world. Oops.
Yeah. And you know, this is another thing I learned when I worked with you, Claire, that even if a cat moves into your space, you make the cat a part of the dance. Or if you're feeling thirsty, you take the cup and it becomes a part of the interview.
There you go. And this is Willow. And she is in a mood to hug me right now. And she's very affectionate and a total sweetie. And if I tried to put her down, she would cling to me. So there's just no point.
And you know, the beauty of it is that even
follow
during
her.
COVID, many people are like, oh, I can't hug anybody. You can hug your cat, you can hug your dog. They're not going to give you the disease. And so there's so much I've learned, particularly, and in fact, as I got deep into the practice of sitting meditation, alternating with 5 rhythms and later open floor, and just letting the healing dances become a part of my life. That's when I went to study the science of compassion and the science of happiness at Stanford and at Berkeley. What's interesting, do you remember Randy Turan? She's come to your dances too. She is the founder
I
of
don't know
Project
that I
Happiness.
remember ever meeting her, but I knew of her. And I
Randy,
think
as well as her husband, David, were in your dance multiple
oh,
times.
but I knew her son. It was her son that I got more connected to, and now I don't remember what his name.
Benji,
Ben,
Benji
yeah,
spent
yeah,
much
yeah,
more time.
yeah, Benji, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, Benji continued much longer, and then he went to graduate school at UCLA. But Randy and David and Benji all started at the same time. And she wrote this book called The Emotional Advantage. We see emotionals as yucky and somehow you have to run away, especially the negative ones. Is it like, no, by embracing emotions, which is what happens, by embracing every rhythm and our resistance to the rhythm, by embracing every uncomfortable feeling as well as comfortable feeling, as well as the cravings that we get. And we like certain things and they don't like certain other things. By embracing it all and witnessing it, there's a shift in consciousness.
You know, like there is no way to be fully present if you're in resistance to what is. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Like it's a really basic principle that you cannot be present if you're avoiding what's right there. Right? If some part of you is split off, that's not fully present. And emotions are that same thing. Emotions are biochemical responses to stimulus, whether it's from our thoughts or from something that's happening around us or something we're anticipating or something we're reacting to because we're remembering it. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, what have you. But, you know, emotions get such a bad rap. It's like a cultural thing where we have decided that there are acceptable emotions and this is the range you're allowed to have, when our humanity is like, you know, It's off the screen, right? There's such a range. We are never not emoting. And so
Yeah.
I think that has been the big thing. And it's when Lisa Herendine and I talk, every time we talk about the work, she remembers the year that I taught the emotions.
Yes,
That
I remember.
I rotated through every week and we did a different emotion. And that was back when we were still working with five rhythms. But it gave her the courage to get out of a really untenable marital situation and where she was really being squashed as a spirit and as a human being. And it was a hard thing to leave. But the work that we did for her to have a place to engage what was in her emotional field empowered her in a way that she would not have had before. So, that's certainly one experience that I can attest to that comes into this whole emotional intelligence realm. But I think it's the missing link right now. When I look at the state of my country, the the suppression of emotional intelligence is like our cultural trauma. Is that we do not see each other as human beings. We have lost our ability to, and not everybody, but like it's easy to see the people like us and have emotions around that and have an emotional exchange, but the othering that's going on, and that speaks to me of a lack of emotional intelligence and empathy.
Yeah.
And so to have and create an environment where people can start to dip their toe into the expression of their emotions, not through language and story and words, but through felt sense, and a movement in the hand can say so much and express so much. And then if you can engage that and be present with it, you've got a much better the possibility that you can stay present for your emotions as they're happening increases exponentially. And then emotions don't become volcanoes,
Yeah.
right? Or conditional or suppressed, because you're meeting them as they come. You're no longer afraid. There's so many people afraid even to feel joy, right? Or to express joy. Like there's some criteria that if their life is any better, if anybody's suffering, they can't feel joy, kind of thing. Or joy is scary because joy is, it could be taken away. There could be a trauma that leads to that. So it's not just anger that gets suppressed.
That's
It's
true.
all of it,
That's true. Especially
right?
now, during these difficult times, a lot of people say, "How can you be just dancing happily when so many people are suffering?" And I said, "Because this is life. We
Yeah,
cannot run away from life." One of my
yeah.
friends, his dad ended up in the hospital because of COVID, and
Hmm.
I said, "Hirsch, you are a bundle of joy, and I cannot see you going into this slow but painful anxiety and depression. Can we just move?" And so we continued the movement practice for 10 minutes in and out in a day. That's it, 10 minutes. And he would be just so happy and dancing and everything. And then he would go back to take care of his dad and take care of his cousin and everybody. Because we need the energy. Have you seen those videos of nurses and doctors dancing for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and then
Yeah.
taking all that energy, even in their bubble, even in that
Their
space
PP,
suit?
their
Yeah,
PPEs.
yeah, the PPEs, exactly. And to be able to be there sweating it out and say, I can dance through my work day.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And we've had compassionate clowns go in, including me, into cancer wards when they were little kids and move our bodies. It's not like we're making fun of others, we're inviting them to the dance of life.
Yeah.
So what if somebody's dying of cancer? They too can dance till we let go of our body.
Well, and the only caution I would have there is that placing more value on joy than sorrow or
Yeah,
fear
yeah, yeah.
or frustration or panic or whatever it is that's showing up. The real secret is to engage and dance the panic and to dance the
Chaos.
scared and to dance in the and to meet what's there. There is where you actually meet an authentic joy, is when you're not avoiding yourself,
And do you
right? That
remember when I started dancing with you? In other words, flex it, Jim. You already
yes.
started laughing. You remember something. Tell us, tell us. Because
Well, to me, Shankar, you are famous for never your heels never being on the ground.
and I would scare people. I would scare people because no matter what the rhythm was playing, no matter what music is playing, I would go like, "Rrrr," and I would scare people literally. And then I realized, much, much later, I realized that I had gotten addicted to the rhythm of chaos. And it's not a
Ah,
surprise that I'm doing this series called Soaring Through Chaos in the midst of the pandemic, because
yeah,
it's an invitation to not be frozen through the chaos, not be stuck and not resisting and running away. I've seen hundreds of messages saying, I want to forget about 2020 and move on to 2021, as if magically changing the calendar year is going to change anything.
yeah.
We have
The
to be here
cognitive
now.
dissonance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We're very familiar with that in America right now.
Well, someday we'll come back and say hindsight really is 2020.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
easy, not easy at all.
No,
And we're
no.
not making fun of people's pain and misery. In fact, we're saying we need to embrace pain through the dance of life. We have to
Yeah,
embrace anything yucky, sweet, shameful. We have to even understand shame and accept our vulnerability.
yeah.
And
Well, I mean, and that was the point of chaos. It was the ability to, when I was still teaching five rhythms, we were holding that space to teach our bodies and our hearts and our minds to come together in unpredictability.
yes,
In that level of I don't know the answer, because that's the real truth. I do not know. I want to predict, I want to control with my mind what's going to happen in the next 15 seconds, but I don't know. My cat could land on my head, and then I would have, I couldn't have planned what I was going to do with that, right?
yeah,
Illusion that we live in, that we can predict or control or manage the outcome or what's coming at us, is so bizarre.
yeah,
But it's the trance that we're all in. And then chaos, when Gabrielle was teaching, it's rooted in the rhythmic, the shifting of weight, right? That ability to manage and move through center and drop your weight into the ground, let your ground have it. And
yeah,
funny enough, that chaos is the home place of sorrow,
yes.
right?
Because
Right.
we fear
So
chaos.
we fear the unprotected, and it's also like there's this real value in understanding that something that we lose is worth mourning, right? It is a testament to the value it had to us if we will stop and surrender to the reality of the loss of that thing, right? Whether it's an illusion or an actual physical loss or loss of a job or loss of a love or, any of those things, is that when we're resisting the reality and then we're not honoring the relationship that we had in there, kind of thing. So I don't know, chaos I think it's not what everybody thinks it is,
Yeah,
you
it's not
know?
the loss of control, not
Yeah,
being able to, what's going to happen next? Is this Zoom going to freeze? You know,
right. I
those
mean,
all kind of things.
every projection we have is an illusion because it could change in any second. Some of us are fairly good at predicting depending on how, connected you are and present you are, but
Yeah,
you kind of see it coming, but there's just no reality is that I don't know what's coming in the next second.
Yeah, and we are going through really one of the craziest times in our life. How has the pandemic been for you personally, Claire, and also your practice? Has the practice changed because now
Yeah,
that we are online?
yeah. So, I mean, personally, it's a mixed bag. Mostly it's been, I live alone, so I've basically been, isolated since March. And I do go out and work in the world. I have clients that I see, but it's just one small family. I can't really go out and take any risks because they're elderly, and my first responsibility is to care for them. It was certainly a huge financial hit, and the uncertainty of my financial future and the long-term effects of, will I have to use my retirement to survive, that kind of thing, and then what do I do in 20 years? So a lot of that weighted kind of feeling about the impact. And in the other sense, I'm an introvert, so all this time alone has been kind of fun. Like without the social obligations, without the having to run out. I love my commute to work. When I teach, I used to drive, like on Saturdays and Sundays, I would have to drive for an hour at 7 in the morning, and then 2 hours back from San Rafael or Sausalito. So to walk out my back door into my little studio and turn on the Zoom, I'm certainly excited about that part. And at first I was really resistant to going online. I was like, wait a minute, the universe is giving me a break. I'm almost burnt out on teaching. I'm not sure I want to do this, like maybe this is my break. Maybe I should just stop for a little while and regather myself. And then I got online and started seeing how amazing it was as an anchor and a support, and how effective it could be. And the thing that I'd been bitching about for so many years on the dance floor, with the emphasis being on the social part, I think ecstatic dance brought that possibility into the field of conscious dance, where
Yeah.
before it was mostly practices like Anna Halpern's life art process, and Gabrielle's 5 rhythms, and Arjuna, his soul motion, and and all these other movement modalities that were practices. They were mindfulness practices with a movement component, in a sense. And then ecstatic dance came along, and more people gravitated towards the social. So
Yeah.
when I saw people going into the Zoom room, there was nobody in the room that they could cling to or get distracted by. And I was so excited to start to see people having to meet themselves in a way that they would never, they could bypass on a big crowded dance floor for the rest of their lives if they were skillful at it. And so I was thrilled to see the way that people are engaging with each other through the screen, but they've only got themselves to dance with in their little space, or maybe they have a partner. But it took it, I've seen people, that the idea that this is a practice is landing deeper, and like we're coming back to the value of practice. And I know, right? So there's this
Yes.
tickle in
It's
me,
coming back.
as hard as it is, like I've been teaching nonstop for 20 years.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I
I
thought,
remember.
maybe this is time to get a 1 year sabbatical in or something, but I can't seem to remove my toe from the pool. There's something valuable here, and I
Yes.
don't want to miss, I have FOMO of, of missing out on the wave of how to move to, I think this is our future. And even if we can someday go back into, like you can't rent a hall and only have 20 people in the room to do the proper
Absolutely.
social distancing, because you can't afford the hall. Nobody's going to work like that. So it's got to be until we can get the numbers big enough to pay the rent in these halls that we're renting, before you will be back in person. And so, and even after that, there's so many people I'm reaching. I have a monthly women's group that started out of the Insight Meditation Center here. And then they invited me to come in and be their teacher, which was such a sweet honor. And we were meeting in person for about a year and 3 months when COVID hit. And at first we weren't sure we were going to go online, and it was a little bumpy starting. But now I'm getting, a dozen women showing up, and they're coming from all over the world. And it's so sweet to have this very intimate feminine space where we can be ourselves and be together and support each other and dance together for an hour and a half. And so there's things I'm just like, I'm finding a different footing in this world, and I will continue that no matter what, because I don't want to give up the access to people all over the world in the same, essentially the same virtual room.
Yeah. In fact, it reminds me, I think serendipitously your website changed from Ecstatic Productions to Inbodied. Tell us the story, and I feel that that's what's happening in the real world now. We were on the ecstasy of social dancing, and now through the ecstasy of social dancing and the memories of it, we're now getting embodied somehow. Like, tell us about what happened. How did you end up with that? And what does embodied mean to you?
Well, it started off, I was looking at all the variations of embodied, Embodied, right? And then discovered that someone had gotten on that bandwagon and bought all the variations of embodied and was offering to sell them for astronomical amounts, right? And so it was like, well, what do I come up with that would, and so get the piece of paper out and start all these variations of how could I get around it, and just typing in, trying to buy a domain. And mostly because Ecstatic Productions was too long to type in every time. And so I was looking to shorten the name of the website for marketing purposes, and then came up with Inbodied, Inbodied. And it was just like, okay, yeah, that's it. That is exactly what I'm about. That's my purpose. It's my soul's longing, is to facilitate the embodying of the integration of the body, the heart, the mind, the soul, the spirit, to really live while we're alive, and warts and all. And right, it's just like, it's there. Let's go there. But I'm always been, people think I'm intense. Because I'm just like ready to dive in. I don't see the point in all the avoidance. I'm sure I do it unconsciously, but when I catch myself, it's like, oh, okay. But I've always been happier. I've never not been a seeker. I'd be interested to see what my mother thought if I gave her that word. And because I was questioning everything. I was so difficult to raise, just because I could not stop challenging the status quo. I think I've been doing it since birth, but yeah, I'm always the hardest on myself.
Yes. In fact, one of the things I learned was how hard I was on myself when I got into the dance practice, because much as I loved being spontaneous, much as I loved doing things in the moment, there were times when I would look back at my own actions, all the actions of others. I loved spontaneity in myself, and I loved spontaneity in others and creative expression. Yet, that's not the right kind of creativity, whether it is the use of F words or it's the use of certain way of life. And I would start
conditional creativity,
conditional openness.
I'm sure I have a few blocks myself. I mean, we're biased, we have an implicit bias.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn and continue to learn in this practice. Did you know that in India, we call, in almost all religions of South Asia, life is considered the dance of Shiva. In other words, essentially, the dancing Shiva is literally a metaphor for being alive.
Okay.
The whole universe is a dance.
Yeah.
And so we don't even say it is Shiva. We say the dance of the Shiva, Tandava as we call it, is the world. The whole universe is produced by, or in Santa Cruz, in dance church, we say that come to dance church, and the priest is the dance. And the facilitator is just there to remind you that you have to let your body move. Dance church is one of my favorites in Santa Cruz,
Yeah.
California. And there are many other practices, but essentially they're all based on the idea that by being present to the here and now, it's not easy to be present sometimes for us when you have to sit for hours and hours. And it's not even mandatory that we keep moving and jumping. We can sit if we want to. So the alternation, going through all the possible moves helps us to find ourselves in a very practical way. What do you think? Where do you see yourself going further, Claire? Where is your
So,
dance taking you?
where is my dance taking me? It's certainly taking me away from the teaching for right now, other than, the small projects that I'm working on, working for the school and working for, doing the women's group. I'm pretty comfortable that that's where I'm going to stay for a while. It feels manageable to me. Having spent every Monday night for 19 and 3/4 years or 19 and a half years showing up, like my whole being was ready for a break from that. And when I got it, I really am appreciating it. So I'm looking more at, am I going to go more towards individual work? And I've started to get some clients, and we're doing Zoom meetings, and I'm working with people with embodiment and engaging their emotional intelligence with their felt sense, and helping, either to work through a particular issue, or to just feel more fully, or to be less afraid of their emotions. And so I'm getting to do this really juicy one-on-one work with embodied intelligence and embodied emotional intelligence. So I'm putting together my SE training, or somatic experiencing. I studied trauma, and working with trauma in an embodied way for the better part of 7 years. And I've dipped my toe in every once in a while to go back into that world to get a little update, but working with the nervous system and the impact of just everyday life, and building resilience and the ability to self-regulate. And so it's such gorgeous work, and I am happy to be doing it. Like, I'm starting to find my feet now that I'm starting to feel stable in my own world. The first 6 months have been very bumpy with all the financial stuff, but to start to feel more resourced in my own psyche, now I have something to give back. And I'm finding it really centering and lovely to hold space for people who are looking for this. And because people are falling apart, and in this, their whole world, the grasping of the impact of COVID is pretty intense. The world has changed, and it's slowly dawning on people that we're not going back, that there is no normal. We're creating normal now, because we're going to be living with this virus for a really long time, and mutations of it, and the next virus that's coming along. And we're seeing the effects, like in California right now, where 700 plus fires, and I'm living between 2 fires, and our air quality has been that which you can't leave the house while there's 90 to 100 degree weather. You can't even open your windows and get a breeze, and nothing here is air conditioned, right? So we're living in these it feels like apocalyptic conditions. And somebody up in Northern California was diagnosed with the plague, and it's gotten so ridiculous that all you can do is laugh, because for among friends, it's like, okay, where are the locusts and the earthquakes? Because that's got to be next, right? So to keep a sense of humor on that bigger level while all your friends are being evacuated from their homes, and right now the count is 410 homes lost in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and in the last 10 days. And so it's how do you hold space for that resilience and in the face of such tragedy, with the earth changing, with the lightning strikes and the lack of rain, and so it's not just the political spectrum or the racial tensions and the racial injustice. It's the planet is going, I love the meme that says, hold my beer, right? You don't think climate change is real, hold my beer. And then we get COVID
That's true.
and the
That's
fires,
true.
right? It's just like, wake up. But so it's a really interesting time.
And
And
Claire,
so to be able to contribute to the people falling apart and go, let me scoop you up and show you how to do this in a way that you're designed for, that your brain and your body are designed to help you through this. Don't take a pill. Don't get stuck on Netflix. Let's do this in a rich and juicy way. Take yourself on, for God's sakes. Let's do it.
wow. So you are actually, what I noticed, Claire, is you're integrating the dance back to reality as it is. It's like reality 101, climate
Oh, yeah.
reality, sustainability, and our own physical and mental and emotional reality. And to be able to say, this is who I am, and I'm not going to
Exactly.
run away from who I am. And yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
It's so stunning to me that even has to be explained and is a concept.
Because we
But that's
forget.
because I've been living this life for 25 years. I started my first time I stepped on a dance floor and started moving my body and connecting it to how I felt and what I thought and what my bigger purpose felt like and what my spiritual life was. It was so like, whoa, that big wake up. And so, I hope that as I'm coming up out of my own pit, that now that I can bring what I know about resilience into my work individually with people. And then the other thing I'm doing is I'm helping elders. I got lucky and somebody handed me their clients, and I've had such a delightful experience being around people in their late 80s. And and the wisdom that's there and the humor and the things that I would never have known. And I feel like I have parents for the first time in my life, and I'm getting paid to be there. But they're really, the one family that I'm working with mostly is just absolutely lovely, and I have fallen in love with them, and they're dependent on me because they're at risk going out their own door. And so, yeah.
So
And
you're
it's
literally helping people soar through chaos.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, what do you do when you're 89 and you're suddenly your life is locked down?
I know, and we have a lot of them in California, Florida, literally around the world, especially
Yeah.
in the Western world. We have a lot of seniors, we have a lot of elders who are, it's very hard. It's very hard. I'm taking care of my, you know, we were actually taking care of an elder family recently, and their son had to fly back from the US just to be there. These are isolating times.
Yeah.
And yet, these are the times when they give us unique opportunities to grow.
Yeah.
And not easy, but important. It is important
Yeah.
to be present. And so I just want to make sure that anybody who is out there listening to us, If you need to directly contact Claire, we will provide all the links to her work as well as to the work she referred to, whether it was the open floor or the 5 rhythms or the more recent work she's doing with Inbodied, the individual coaching as well as the group work that we have been doing. As I said to myself, this is not an advertisement. This literally saved my life and brought me back to who I am. And it helped me to retire early from a corporate and entrepreneurial journey into going around the world. I've been traveling through Korea and Mexico and the United States and India. My next stop is going to be Africa. And it all started with embracing who I am, what life is about, and to say, I'm going to bring in, whether it's the corporate side or it's the the juicy personal side, whether it's the yucky side or it's the amazing side. So I'm really grateful for all these healing dance practices. And along with that, the other things, the science behind it. I'm grateful for the Center for Compassion that helped me to understand myself from a neuroscientific perspective, and the Greater Good Science Center at Berkeley. So Stanford and Berkeley have been the pillars in terms of helping me understand the science along with everybody, and to Claire and dozens of dance teachers who helped me be present and not run away into theory or into just keeping all this knowledge here to be.
Well, I think you're cutting yourself short, selling yourself short when you think this is your primary source of intelligence.
That's true. Yeah.
Because
it's a heady experience.
90 some odd percent comes through the bodies and the movements and the sensory experience of being in the world. And if you're disconnected from that, you're really disconnected from your aliveness.
Yes.
And I heard you saying something about work and personal. And my ideal of the world is that they're not different.
They're not
That we can be our authentic selves no matter where we are, and that our work is a reflection of that aliveness and that giving back, instead of a means to an end or making the wealthy wealthier. And, it's just, and the way we cut ourselves off in order to serve that that purpose.
We've been habituated to divisiveness. We have been we've been literally habituated to divisiveness, whether it is even in politics. We want consciousness and we want enterprise. We want freedom, yet we want certain rules to have decorum, right? So, but we see them as opposites rather than as complementary.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the first things. That was one of the first things that attracted me to Gabrielle, was what she called schizophrenia. Feeling one thing, thinking another, and doing something completely different. Like we were divorced from flesh and spirit and acting in ways that were so incongruous with our heart and our soul and our spirit, and unconsciously doing this all the time. It was it's our normal world. Well, there's a new normal coming. Let's make this integrated aliveness the new normal.
That's true. That's true. In fact, when she was passing, as she was passing on, I finally saw her Wikipedia page, and I realized that I was born on the same day. And what a joy to be able to connect to Gabrielle Roth and to understand that we cannot separate life. And her first clients were actually schizophrenics when she was still a undergraduate student in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she was doing dance.
And a high school substitute teacher. And she was a trip, I'm telling you. I loved her. She was irreverent and wild enough for me to really engage with, and was saying something. Being in her presence was magical. She would go on like a verbal rampage, kind of like just
Yes.
get into something, not angry, but just so passionate and so like connected to something bigger than herself, like something was being channeled right through. And I used to call it, I said, I have that sense in my body that I have been cellularly rearranged just hearing her, because all of my thinking would change, all of my like, and I would feel it as a physical sensation, and I
Yeah.
knew I wasn't the same at the end of sitting in her presence and having
Shift
her.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 it was awesome.
Well, so much to learn and so much to continue to learn. And it's really, honestly, Claire, it's a joy to be able to be reconnected with you. I had this fear of zooming out and reaching out to you, and here we are. And so much to learn because you were my very first dance teacher, and it helped me to get back and bring back all elements. I'm no longer separating my work as the tech work and the the dance work. It's all one, and it connects
Yeah,
through my current project, Soaring Through Chaos. But it will continue. It will
yeah,
continue. Whatever I do, I will bring in my leadership trainings and creativity. We also have movement practices and music and art, and there is no separation between any of this, as well as how to make cash flow and how to build a profitable business and to make things work. It's the business of life. It's the business of being alive.
well, I think you're certainly an example of, you don't have to sell your soul to be successful.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
really can. I think we're going to be more successful when we drop the old paradigm of the ego structures of ruling the world and come more into a heartful and service oriented space where we're collaborating and being of service to one another, and recognizing that when we lift each other up, we're all benefiting from that,
yes.
instead of the punitive cultures that we're experiencing right now. I hope this is the last gasping breath of that punitive culture.
Maybe it's time to close this session. If you liked what we were talking about, please give us some feedback and let us know if you want to hear more. Maybe we can just have another session just when Claire is holding a dance space here or a coaching space. There's so much to learn from each other. And definitely, Claire, you clarified a lot of things for me in life. I'm grateful. And I'm
Happy to
grateful
do
to
it.
everybody who is out here. Please come share. It's a multiple way. It's not just one way traffic. We want to hear from you. And we want to hear and make this world a better place.
Thank you for inviting me to be here, Shankar. It's really lovely to be sitting in California and you sitting in India, and the connection to feel as strong as it did when you were standing here in February.
Yes, yes. I was
Yeah.
there in your second last class. I remember that
I
in the
had
Bay
one,
Area.
maybe, yeah, I think the ninth of March was our last class.
Wow. Yeah, I was there in the February class.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 You were headed to Mexico last I saw you.
Yes, yes. And I did
All right, love.
I
Well,
did go to a dance class in Mexico, in Sierra
cool.
de Mexico, yeah, and in Chihuahua, yeah,
Yeah, there are some teachers down there, and I know
amazing.
Maddie was going there quite often before all of this started. So in the future, if there ever is a an opening, I'd love to come to India and work with you.
There will be, there are many. In fact, I've been talking about that, how to bring the international community together. There are meetups in Goa, which have been suspended right now, but there'll be
Hmm.
many, many opportunities to bring, and in Rishikesh, in the Himalayas, right on the beach in Goa, as well as in the Himalayas in Rishikesh and in Dharamsala. So we
Yeah,
bring in the spiritual, the physical, the ocean, and the mountains in different
beautiful.
spaces. So it's happening. It's happening in a big way. We also bring in the folk dances,
Hmm.
just like we have in every area. The folk dances are an integral part of movement. We don't
Hmm.
teach the folk dances, but people are free to move whichever way. So there's there's this rooted conditioning, whether it's in Africa, African dances. That's what I'm going to be learning when I go there.
Well, and that's what I'm thinking is I would have so much to learn from your culture and the
Exactly.
diversity of the
Yeah.
the different elements of what constitutes India instead of what we, our
Yeah.
perceptions, our Western
It's not a one
perceptions
size
are.
fits all.
No, it's
It's
not.
a
It's
continent in
so
itself.
beautifully, yeah, rich. It's really rich with tradition and
Much to
fascinating.
learn. Much to
Yeah,
learn. Just
there's a
like I
lot to
learned so much by being in the United States for 30 years. And now
Wow.
I'm literally hopping around as much as Corona will allow me to.
Yeah.
So, well, stay in touch and please, everyone, tell us what you think. And if you would like to come on my show and share, this is a sharing forum. This is not a competition. This is sharing who we are so that we can learn from each other, so that we can be together and not be socially distant. Thank you.
Yeah.